I was 19 the night my life ended. Not by a bullet, not by a rival, but by my own damn choices. I wasn't born a criminal. I didn't dream of prison. But I grew up in a place where survival came first and dreams came last, where men disappeared young and boys were taught to harden up or get swallowed. By 16, I'd already dropped out of school. By 17, I was stealing cars and selling weed to feed my siblings when my mom got sick. By 18, I'd been arrested twice. No felonies yet, just warnings. But I thought I was untouchable. I thought the world was mine to take. I was angry, broke, stupid, and I was hungry for respect. That's what led me to the wrong crew. Two older guys, both already had records, both already had blood on their hands. But to me, they looked like power. They talked like legends. I wanted in. I wanted to stop being invisible. So when they planned the robbery, I didn't even hesitate. A small corner store, middle of the night, just a quick hit for cash and cigarettes. Easy money, they said. No one gets hurt. We wore masks. One of them handed me a gun. I hesitated for maybe half a second. Then I tucked it into my hoodie and nodded. I wanted to prove I could handle it. The second we kicked in that door, everything felt like slow motion. The lights were too bright. The clerk looked up, startled. Skinny kid, maybe 20, eyes wide with fear. I screamed at him to open the drawer. He fumbled. My hands were sweating through the gloves. The gun felt heavier than it should have. Then he reached under the counter. I didn't think. I didn't wait. I just pulled the trigger. The sound cracked through the air like a thunderclap. He dropped to the floor, screaming, bleeding from his shoulder. I froze. My ears were ringing. My stomach turned. We grabbed what we could and ran. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't eat. The blood, the scream, it all played on repeat in my head. I kept telling myself he'd be fine. I wanted to believe that. 2 days later, they came for me. No chase, no resistance. I opened the door and raised my hands. Deep down, I knew it was over. They put me in a cold room with a steel table, showed me the footage, played the audio, my voice, my face, my gun. He survived, but that didn't matter. I had fired. I had crossed the line. The courtroom was quiet when they read the verdict. Guilty. Armed robbery with a firearm. Attempted murder. Life. My mother cried. I didn't. I just stared straight ahead, hollow inside. Everything felt distant, like I was watching someone else's story. But it was mine, and it was just beginning. They put me on the bus before sunrise. Chains on my wrists, chains on my ankles. Surrounded by silence, steel, and men with eyes that had already given up. The ride felt endless. Every bump on that road just drove the truth deeper into my chest. This is it. No rewind, no escape, just time and concrete. When we pulled through the gates, I saw the walls, thick, tall, unforgiving, like the world had built a coffin for the living. The door slammed behind me, and something in me went quiet. They stripped me down, deloused me, gave me a number and a uniform. Just like that, I stopped being a person. I became inmate 2113546. My cell was 6 feet by 9, metal bed bolted to the wall, thin mattress, no pillow, a toilet right next to where I slept, one narrow window that let in light but not hope. That first night, I didn't sleep, not because of fear, not even guilt, because of the noise, shouting, banging, screams that sounded like animals in a slaughterhouse. Someone laughed, someone cried, someone begged for their life. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my hands still trembling. Next morning I learned the rules. Don't stare too long, don't bump anyone, don't ask questions. Keep your head down, mind your business, trust no one, and above all, show no weakness. That was the hardest part, because I was scared. Not the kind of fear you feel before a fight or a jump. No, this was deeper. Like something inside me knew I might not come out of this alive. I saw a man get stabbed over a cup of instant noodles. I saw another hang himself in the shower. I watched guards beat a guy unconscious and leave him bleeding on the floor like trash. I kept my mouth shut, did what I was told. I learned how to move through the yard without catching heat. I learned who to avoid, and who might slit your throat in your sleep just to send a message. Fights were constant, racial lines ran deep, alliances were thin. I saw eyes with no soul behind them, and slowly I started to feel the same. I lost track of time. Days melted together. My mind dulled. I stopped counting. I stopped hoping. The worst day was when I got the letter. It was from my younger sister. She said Mom passed. Cancer. She died while I was rotting in a cage, and I couldn't even hold her hand. I read that letter so many times it tore in half. I folded it, taped it, read it again. That grief didn't just break me, it buried me. After that, I stopped writing back. What was the point? I was no brother, no son, no man. I was just a ghost breathing behind bars, and a small voice in me whispered, "This is who you are now. Get used to it." It didn't happen all at once. There was no light from the sky, no voice from above. Just a kid, skinny, 17, eyes too young for the weight he was carrying. His name was Darnell. He came in scared like most of them do. First-timer, fresh charge, barely knew how to breathe in that place. The older guys circled him like wolves. Some wanted to use him. Some wanted to break him. Same cycle I'd seen for years. But he reminded me of someone. Me. Not the man I'd become. The boy I used to be. One day in the yard, I saw him sitting alone, staring at a book upside down. Yeah, upside down. Some guys nearby started laughing. Loud, cruel, that kind of laugh that slices through bone. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I walked over and sat next to him. Didn't say anything at first, just sat. Then I asked, "You need help?" He nodded once, didn't even look up. Said real low, "I can't read." That moment did something to me. It cracked something open, something I thought was dead. I offered to help him. Just a few letters a day, simple stuff. We met in the library, sat at the back table where no one paid attention. First lesson, the alphabet. He stumbled over every vowel, but he showed up the next day, and the next. Week by week, I watched him change. The way his eyes lit up the first time he read a full sentence. The cat ran fast. You'd think he won the lottery. He smiled, and I realized I hadn't smiled in years. The guards noticed. One of them pulled me aside, asked what I was doing with that kid. I told him the truth, just helping him read. He said nothing. But the next week, I got moved to work in the prison's education unit. That place saved me. I started helping other inmates, young ones, old ones, guys who never even finished second grade. Some couldn't spell their own names. Some were ashamed to even try. But I kept showing up because it gave me something I didn't know I needed, purpose. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was doing something that mattered. And little by little, I started seeing myself differently. Not as a lost cause, not just a number, but as a man who could still build something good out of the wreckage. It didn't erase what I did. Nothing could. But maybe, just maybe, it meant I didn't have to stay the monster forever. Redemption didn't come like a reward. It came like a mirror I couldn't turn away from. After Darnell, I kept going back to the education unit, not because I was told to, but because it became the only part of prison where I felt human. I'd sit with guys who had been tossed aside by the world, just like me, and for 1 hour a day we'd chase something small, a sentence, a paragraph, a name spelled right. I started writing again, at first just in a journal, then letters to my sister, to the family of the store clerk, to the judge who sentenced me. None of them wrote back. I didn't expect them to. That wasn't the point. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I was trying to tell the truth. I wrote to the victim most of all. I told him I was sorry, that I had no excuses, that what I did that night was reckless, selfish, and brutal. I told him I still saw his face every time I closed my eyes. I didn't send most of those letters, but I needed to write them. Every time I put pen to paper, it was like peeling back another layer of the man I'd been and facing the wreckage I left behind. There were nights I couldn't sleep. Nights I sat on the edge of my bunk, staring at the wall, feeling the full weight of everything I destroyed. I didn't just hurt one man that night. I hurt his family, my family, every kid I could have mentored, every moment I could have made count, and all of it for what? Street credit? Quick cash? It felt so small now, so stupid, so unforgivable. But inside those four walls, something strange happened. Some of the same guys who once called me a lifer started calling me teacher. I didn't correct them. One day, one of the young guys, couldn't have been more than 20, he came up after class and said, "You're the reason I passed my GED, man. You changed my life." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and went back to my cell and cried for the first time in 15 years. Because for once, someone saw me as more than the worst thing I'd ever done. I began mentoring inside and outside the classroom, helped set up book clubs, ran writing workshops. I even got certified to tutor literacy full-time. The prison warden shook my hand one day, said, "If we had more guys like you, we'd need fewer prisons." I didn't feel proud. I felt responsible. Because everything I was doing now, I should have done long ago. I don't believe redemption is something you get. I think it's something you chase. Every day, every choice. You don't wake up forgiven, you wake up committed. And for me, that was enough to keep going. I walked out of those gates after 28 years. No fanfare, no one waiting. Just me, a plastic bag with a few belongings, and the sun hitting my face like it was the first time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, breathing air that didn't smell like metal and bleach. They say freedom feels light, but that day, it felt heavy. Every step outside felt like I was dragging chains no one could see. I took the bus to a halfway house, sat in the back, watched the city blur by, taller buildings, faster cars, people glued to little glowing screens. The world had moved on without me. I felt like a ghost walking through someone else's life. The first night out, I couldn't sleep. The silence was too quiet. No clanging doors, no yelling, no boots hitting concrete, just the hum of a fridge and my thoughts, louder than ever. I got a job through a re-entry program, construction, hard labor, long hours, but I showed up early, stayed late. I didn't complain. I couldn't afford to. Every paycheck felt unreal. Money I earned the right way. I rented a small apartment above a laundromat. One room, one bed, one cracked mirror. And every morning I made that bed like I was still inside. Tight corners, smooth sheets. Some habits don't die. What surprised me most was how many people didn't look away. A neighbor baked me a pie. A kid asked for help with his homework on the stairs. A pastor invited me to speak at a youth center. I said yes. The first time I stood in front of a classroom full of teenagers, I thought my voice would break, but it didn't. I told them the truth, told them I shot a man, lost everything, spent half my life locked up, told them it wasn't worth it, the money, the pride, the street rep, none of it. And when I finished, they clapped. Not because I was a hero, but because they saw I was real. Now I speak every month. I mentor kids on probation. I help at a literacy program for adults who slip through the cracks. I'm not trying to erase what I did. I can't, but I'm building something new, brick by brick, from the ruins. People ask me if I've changed. I tell them this: I'm not the man I used to be, but I carry him with me every day, not with pride, but with purpose. He reminds me what happens when you stop caring, when you stop thinking, when you stop believing you matter. And I refuse to go back there. I'm not looking for a clean slate, just a clear path forward. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.